Welcome to the Bike Talk with Dave podcast. I think we'll call this one Bike Talk with Jenna podcast. I'm your guest, Dave Mabel, with the hostess, Jenna Rinehart. That was weird. Sorry about that. Anyway, Jenna, it's great to have you back on. I know you were just on, like a week ago, your episode dropped. So everybody go back and listen to that to get to know Jenna Rinehart. But you just got back, like you still have jet lag from getting back from Europe, racing in the UCI Gravel World Championships. I don't know, can I editorialize? No, I'm going to let you do all the talking. I'm not going to say anything. But we will talk about it a little bit. Anyway, I just wanted to give you the opportunity to download your experience and talk about your trip to Belgium. So welcome back, Jenna. It's great to see you.
Yeah, thank you for having me back on. I'm excited to share with people my experience.
It must have been wild. And, I mean, we can get into the race in a little bit, but I want to talk about your trip to Belgium, what that was like, what it was like it's such a interesting mix of people who were on the US squad with you. And I want to hear about like the dynamics of that, who you knew and who you didn't know and how the dynamics worked during the race. And your thoughts on the course, and then maybe a little editorial action after all of that. But let's hear the good fun stuff. How was your trip to Belgium?
Yeah, it was wonderful. It was just actually my first time ever to Europe, so it was quite the experience. Our trip had a little hiccup going over there. The Brussels airport actually had a strike. The security workers striked the day we were supposed to land, so our flight actually got canceled. We were driving back from the rad, we'd just gotten back to Minneapolis. We're driving back from the airport on Sunday and found out our flight was canceled, and we were supposed to fly out on Monday the next day. And so our options were either to rebook to like a nearby airport, or otherwise delay a day and then go a day later. And because we were going to not even be over there for quite a week, we didn't really want to delay a day, so we decided to fly into Paris and then take the Eurostar train, the Bolt train or whatever, to Brussels from there. So that was quite the experience. I've never been to Europe. And then my husband came, and then a friend of ours came, and we had bags and bike boxes and a lot of luggage to try to get on the trains in Europe and figure that all out was interesting. But we got there.
I mean, what a great way to see Europe, right?
Yeah, and step in France for just a little bit too. So,
what time did you get into Paris? Like, were you there during the day? Did you get this? I mean, I'm sure you just went from the airport to the train, but I don't know. Was it daylight?
Yeah, we landed in the morning. I think it was 9 in the morning. Which I don't know what time that was back home. We were a little tired and messed up. But we had to take a train from the airport to kind of into Paris, actually, to then get to a different train station to take the Eurostar to Brussels. So that was an experience of just figuring out how to buy the tickets and what train to get on, and lugging all of our stuff and trying to get through the little gates with big bike boxes was we were stood out like the dumb Americans trying to figure it out. That's for sure.
No doubt. That's kind of fun. How many bikes did you bring?
I just had one bike, and then my husband brought his bike, and his bike is one size bigger than mine, but technically I could fit on it if I needed to, worst case. And then the wheel set that he had on his bike was sort of a spare wheel set for me during the race for the tech zones and stuff. So we tried to kind of get by with bringing as little as possible, but still making sure it had some necessities.
I want to talk about the kind of the technical side of the race. I don't know, and compare it to American gravel, like you're deep into American gravel, and this is a very different style of race. Um, but so you get on the train, you head to Brussels. Were you in Brussels during the day? Like, did you get to see Brussels? What'd you think of Brussels?
Yeah, we actually didn't see Brussels too much. We just got on a train, another train to Leuven, which was like about 25 minutes or 20-minute train ride. So we weren't too far from Brussels, but because we had so much gear, we couldn't really just like walk around Brussels with all of our stuff. And by then we were just like tired and ready to go to bed actually, even though it was like, mid-afternoon there. And so, yeah, didn't get to see Brussels too much, but Leuven was a really cool city. So, yeah, we didn't rent a car. The way the race was laid out, it was right near. So, Leuven, the finish of that race actually was just right across from the train station. And when I talk about the course a little later, I'll explain, but you actually ride across and over the train station during the race. So, it's
Oh,
kind of
cool.
very unique race. And then the race actually starts in a different town called Halle, and the train station is right by the start of that too. So we didn't really have to rent a car. We just took the trains, although it took us a while to kind of figure out how the trains worked. And we got on the wrong train a couple times and got off and had to switch. And by the last day when we went back to the airport, I think we finally sort of had it figured out, but it took the whole week to
You
figure out
definitely sound
things.
like American tourists in Europe.
For sure, yes. We had to
Was
ask for
language barrier,
forms.
was that hard?
Um, so most of the people spoke English too, so that was nice. A lot of the restaurants, some of them had menus in English, some didn't. So, but we just use our phones, Google Translate
Oh,
to read
sure.
it. So a couple of times I wasn't exactly sure what I was ordering sometimes, but yeah, the language barrier wasn't too bad. They were most of the people I would say speak both Dutch or French and then English, oh, at least some English.
Hmm. Enough that you can kind of navigate.
Yeah, for the most part. The train like instructions and stuff were not in English, so like we just kind of had to guess a little bit on when we were supposed to get off with that. But yeah,
Huh,
it
that's
was an
crazy.
adventure.
So I have a question. I mean, obviously I do. I have a podcast, right? That's my job is to ask questions. But did you stay with the team or are you guys on your own?
Yeah, so USA Cycling actually didn't support at all at this race. They didn't really even communicate with us very well. There was definitely some frustrations with them, but yeah, so it was not very much not a team atmosphere, unfortunately.
Hmm.
It was very individual. There was Americans that kind of grouped together, and some of them stayed together. I ended up kind of working with Leah Vanderlyn, who is also in the Lifetime Grand Prix, and her husband. And they actually had a rental car. So for the day of the race, my husband and friend were able to team up with her husband and hit up a bunch of the feed zones together. So that was really nice. And then we pre-rode the course together a little bit. But yeah, unfortunately, it sounds like USA Cycling blew their whole budget at the Olympics this year, which I get is Olympic year, but they didn't save anything or help anyone figure out, where to stay or even, yeah, it was just a little bit frustrating experience with working with them, but we made the most of it.
That's interesting. We could probably go off on a whole diatribe about like USA Cycling, USA Gravel, all of that. But hashtag US is the birthplace of gravel. Anyway, I'm done with my editorial right there. Um, but so like Shayna Paulus and Heidi France. I don't know Heidi France. Shayna is um, her brother is Nielsen Paulus. Um,
Yeah.
Obviously world tour rider. I think she's world tour this year. Lauren Stevens. You probably know Lauren from gravel.
Yep, I've raced with Lauren a few times, and so know her a little bit and talked to her a little bit before going to Belgium too. And she was the one that kind of gave me some tips, and then because she'd raced the Road Worlds in Louvain, which was in
Oh,
2021. They had the Road
yeah.
World Championships there, so yeah, I didn't know the other road racers in the field, the American road racers. They don't. Most of them haven't done a lot of the gravel races, so I didn't know who they were,
So, like,
but yeah.
you guys didn't go to dinner the night before or anything and talk about, okay, we're gonna try and get Hannah up the road. Hannah Shell was there. She's a Bike Talk with Dave alumni. Um, but there was none of that. There was none of like, hey, let's try and do
No,
anything.
no. Last year it sounds like USA Cycling had some more support, and they did have like a team strategy, and they worked for Lauren last year. This year there was zero communication or direction or yeah work, and I mean maybe some of the other girls just talked with each other and said they'd work together, but it was never a group communication at all,
Huh.
unfortunately.
I find that interesting. I was kind of excited to hear how you guys got all along and, all the drama from putting a week together of riding and racing. But sounds like it was
Yeah, very
all
individual.
for me and me for.
I did end up in during the race in a group with a couple of the other Americans, and that was pretty fun. And we definitely encouraged each other and told each other good job. And then towards the end of my race, we knew it was going to come down to a sprint. I think there was maybe 8 of us left in the group or so, and there was one rider from the U.S. Her name is Morgan Aguirre. I don't know her very well because she actually lives in Girona, Spain, but is an American. And we both kind of chatted with each other before we were getting close to the finish, asking each other how each of our sprint was, and neither of us were were great sprinters, and we were going up against Allison Jackson and Tiffany Cromwell, and yeah, we weren't able to really lead each other out very well or help, but we at least had chatted and were friendly with each other. And Laura King was actually in our group for a while too, till we did about the last 29-mile loop or so. So it was nice to have Americans around, and I think we were all, encouraging of each other, but just not really any team strategy there.
Yeah. Huh. Cool. Well, maybe that's something to improve on future gravel world championships.
For sure.
Um, yeah, Allison Jackson, like, was that kind of fun? Did you know, like, hey, I'm riding with the freaking Paris Roubaix winner right here?
Yeah, I had to kind of almost pinch myself a few times out there. I was like, is this real? Am I dreaming? I did know it was her. We were together for, I'd say, most of the race. And I knew her, and then Tiffany Cromwell was a top rider. She had a mechanical early on, and then came kind of raging by me, and I was able to jump on her wheel, and then because I kind of blew off the front group. I don't know how far into the race, but earlier than I'd kind of hoped, but was able to recover a little bit. And then she came by, and then we kind of jumped on her wheel, and then we started to grab riders along the way and formed a group of maybe 15 to 20 of us for a good chunk of the race. And that included Allison Jackson, and then definitely some other strong riders, as well as I'm starting to figure out who was all in that group after looking at results. And yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, I bet it was super cool. Have you done much road racing?
Not a lot. I've done a few local things. I did for a couple years guest race for a road team. I did the Nature Valley Grand Prix stage race, and then I also did the Cascade Classic, which was like a week long road race in Bend, Oregon. And so I learned a lot from those, but that was really my only road racing
Did
experience.
uh, I mean, I know there were gravel sector, there were all kinds of different sectors, which I want to hear about, but did this feel like a road race? Were you guys like driving like in a road race? or did it feel at times like an American gravel race? Like I remember at Unbound, you going by in a group of 15 at 100 miles, and I mean there was a strong group of 15 charging down the road at Unbound at 100 miles. Did it feel like that, or did it feel like a World Tour road race?
Yeah, I think it definitely didn't feel like an American gravel race at all. It was very, very. I would say the closest thing I would compare it to would be like a Belgian waffle ride, like a unroad race is what they like to call those. So not like big, wide open, true gravel sections, but just constantly changing surfaces, questioning your tire, what tire you should be running, because do you want something good for the pavement, or do you want something good for the little mud sections or dirt sections? But there definitely was road elements. I would say still very different than the American road races I've done. Probably sounds like I've never done the spring classics, but I've watched some of the spring classics, and I think people compared it to more of like a part spring classic, part cyclocross race. You did see like big groups, and drafting was key, and the road sections, I think I kind of underestimated how hard and important those would be. I kind of chose a little bit wider of a tire, and something I was thinking maybe I could make up time in the dirt sections with my skills, but the problem is it was so full on the road, and it was kind of that accordion effect. If you're too far back, you're just like getting sprinting out of there's so many corners in the race, so every single corner you're just full on sprint, anaerobic effort out of it. But by the time when we would hit the dirt sections, it was like a long line of riders kind of in it, and like I couldn't really make a difference or move forward, and honestly was sort of recovering from the efforts on the road a little bit. So yeah, I don't really know. It was such a crazy race. It's hard to compare it to anything exactly. It was just full of everything.
How much gravel would you say there was?
Well, they're required to have it be, I think, about 60% off-road, which I don't know if that also includes the cobbles or not. I would say it was half for sure. I mean, there was some gravel paths. They were like narrow paths through some beautiful forests. The forests were amazingly beautiful, huge trees. But then there was like single track, and you're going through like kind of like a farm field almost, and just random little dirt trails. Like I don't really know what they're there for, but and then cobbles, and then all sorts of surfaces, a little bit of grass in a couple spots. It was really rainy and muddy leading up to the race, and so the first day I rode there was like slick in spots, but we actually had experienced, I was prepared for the Belgian weather that you hear about and it being crappy, and it was actually gorgeous weather. We lucked out and had sunshine and low winds, and so the course dried out pretty well. But yeah, I would say 50 to 60% dirt, and then the rest pavement or cobblestones, which were not like smooth pavement, kind of challenging and rough, trying to find a line that worked.
So what tires did you ride?
Yeah, I ran Rinehart. The tire is sort of a prototype tire right now, so it's not actually out for production yet, but it was a 44 millimeter width, so a little bit, I think I probably had the widest tires in the field after looking around at the
Says
start.
the mountain biker.
Marianne Voss was on 33s, so I think Lottie was on the Pathfinder 38s, it looked like. So yeah, I would think if I could go back, I would have. It was hard for me to, when we left, it looked like it was going to be muddy and rainy, and I knew I wasn't going to have the setup and the capacity to easily change tires, so I kind of had to pick a tire a little bit before we went. I did bring a spare just in case, but it wasn't very easy with our setup to change, so I just kind of went with it. But I think I would have probably gone narrower something still with a little tread in the front for sure, because there was a lot of corners, but seems like narrower would have maybe helped me a bit on the paved sections.
Can you say whether or not you had much tread on your tires?
Yeah, they were smoother down the middle with some tread on the outsides.
And what kind of pressure were you running?
I was running 28 psi.
Huh, wow. Yeah. Um, 40% pavement. That must have drained you over time.
It was hard. Yeah, I think the initial, my whole race routine was a little bit off because we took the train to the start, which is about an hour train ride, but we were nervous about the train, missing the train or getting on the wrong one. It was just a little hectic, so we left earlier than we didn't start till noon, which was nice, but we kind of got to the race early just to make sure. But then it was there were so many fans, which was awesome, but it was really hard to find a spot to warm up. We didn't have like a trainer or rollers or anything, so trying to ride around this busy town with all these people, so I didn't get really my best warm up in. And the start was full on, like a cross country
Really?
mountain bike race start, pretty much. So it funneled down really narrow, and then there was a sharp 180-degree turn pretty quickly, and so I didn't start all the way at the back, which I was excited about. I guess I got some UCI points from that race I won this year. So I started maybe a little mid-pack or just a little bit further back than that. But the start was really hard, and the pavement right after, like, we did a loop through the start town. So it was about 8-mile loop, and then we looped back through, and then we went and started riding towards Louisville. And that first 8 miles, I was still in the pack. It was really hard. But then, I don't know, another 10 miles or so after that, it was just some punchy climbs and a lot of pavement in that section. And that really, I was working super hard to, and just, I think, not getting myself far enough into the group, that I was just getting that slingshot effect of just sprinting for dear life out of every corner and just kind of getting back on, and then having to do it again and again and again. So I blew up a little, not fully blow up, but I definitely I fell off and had to kind of catch my breath for a little bit. And then shortly after that, that's when I think Tiffany Cromwell came ripping by me after I think she had a puncture or something early on, like right away, and got it fixed and was on a mission to get back to the front. We never quite got there, but that getting on her train definitely helped me. And then I really started to feel a lot better the second half of the race, and that was pretty motivating. We started catching a lot of people, our train, and just and then picking off, and then our train just kind of started to shrink down throughout the race. And we went out when you loop through the town that you finish in, Louisville, and then you have another 29-mile loop to do before you come back into the town. And that 29-mile loop had a few more like technical elements to it, which I think helped me. Plus, I was moving forward, where some people, I think, stayed on that front group longer and then blew up a bit, and then we're going backwards. So definitely fun to be the one that's going forward at that point in the race.
Always is, isn't it?
Yeah, I've been on both sides, but it's fun when it's going well for you.
Yeah, for sure. You guys must have. How far was it? What was the total distance?
Yeah, it ended up being about 84 miles or so.
Dig it. And you were, I think you finished like 11 minutes back from Voss and Kopecky, who sprinted it out. And I think they were quite a ways ahead. I don't have the time for third, fourth, fifth, but I think they were quite a ways ahead of third, fourth, fifth. So you guys weren't all that far back.
Yeah, there was a big group. We were actually just over 2 minutes outside of 8th place. So there was a
Oh,
huge
wow.
group of yeah. So I was pretty excited. In a I think my time was like 4 hours and 12 minutes. So in a little over 4 hour race to be that close to the top 10, I was pretty thrilled with that. I didn't really have any expectations going in, just obviously with the caliber of riders, and then not having raced most of these people and just being in such a foreign environment. But yeah, I was very happy to see that at the end, to be so close, and yeah, it was cool.
I'm curious how Justin, your husband, was there, your mechanic. He's a great mechanic, by the way, and I know this because I was with you guys at Unbound, and I was hanging out in the garage the night before the race, and he is lubing your chain one link at a time. I was like, dude, that is like meticulous. He's like, I am meticulous. I was super impressed. So I know you have got a good mechanic in your husband, great experience racing, but no team car. You didn't even have a rental car. Like, how did that work? What if you had a flat? What if your bike broke in half? Like what? Like how did you eat? How did you get feeds? I can't imagine Justin traipsing around the European countryside trying to find you in this race of 100 women storming through the countryside in crowded little foreign land of Belgium. I just can't imagine that. How did it work?
Yeah, I would say, yeah, like we were definitely at a disadvantage compared to like the Belgian team or the Netherlands, who just had it all set. It was very, yeah, you kind of had to just go with the flow and not be too stressed about it or too type A about your what you're going to get and whatnot. But there was actually quite a few feed zone and tech zones, but having not really been able to see it very well. We were able to pre-ride the course, but like we weren't able to figure out exactly what the feeds, every feed or tech zone looked like and which ones they were for sure going to be able to get to. And then thankfully we were able to kind of team up with Leah Vanderlyn and her husband Scott, who had the car, and they were able to kind of go with him. And then we had 3 different people that were able to hand water bottles. The really tricky part was that the feed zones were really hectic and really fast. Some of them were like on almost like a downhill. So I actually missed my first 2 bottles. The first feed zone, I didn't really fully need something yet, but they were there. And I didn't actually spot Justin until he was like right next, like I'd already kind of was right even with him. And so it was too late. The next one, I really did need something, and I tried to grab it, but we were just going so fast that I dropped it. But one cool thing was Hannah Shell had a pretty big crew there. I think it was like Whitney Allison and her, and so they're like husbands, and like maybe a couple other Americans were in the feed zones as well. And they so shortly after I missed my second bottle, their group was right there, and they were holding out bottles for US. I think it was for any of the US riders, and I was able to grab one, and that totally saved me.
Oh,
I
that's
sent her a
awesome.
message afterwards, and I said thank you to whoever gave me a bottle, because I was panicking a bit because I was out of everything. And so yeah, the bottle had some nutrition in it, and that really saved me. So that helped. And then actually my parents came out to the race too. They were actually on a trip in Italy, and they were supposed to head back, but they changed their flights and made a quick stop to Brussels and then to the race for just a couple days. And so they were at a feed zone near the finish line as just like a backup option. And so I was able to grab a bottle of water from them, so to get me to the finish basically. But a couple of the feeds that I got, once I realized I was missing 2, I had to slow down and just like risk getting off the group a bit to grab one, and then had to chase really hard to get back on. But yeah, it was an experience of learning how to get a feed. I mean, maybe that's a little bit more what road racing is like, really fast, hectic feed zones, but I need to practice the feeds at really high speeds for the future.
I'm sure when you got off the plane after your 15-hour flight or however long it took, your phone blew up with offers from world tour teams. Um, but yeah, it's a very different world, and I'm just like, I can't imagine the hecticness of all of that, of everything you just talked through. Like, that's just chaos. Like, it's almost like, forget it. Like, I'm just gonna wear a hydration pack and slam 2 water bottles and hope I can make it the 84 miles. But sounds like you got some feeds and it worked out. What about technically? What if you had a flat in like? Did you just bring stuff with you so you could fix it, or like what was your strategy there?
Yeah, I did have similar to what I would carry in U.S. gravel races. I had CO2, like a dart and a spare tube and a tire lever and whatnot. So I did have that because really my goal was I wanted to finish this thing. I wanted to go down that main drag of Leuven to the finish with all the fans. I just wanted that experience. And so I was going to finish whatever I could do to finish was my goal. But I think most people probably carried that as well because, yeah, even though it had road race elements into it, you couldn't have a team car. You could get a wheel change at the tech zones. So there was maybe 4 different tech zones and then 4 feed zones. And so Justin and Scott and our friend Paul, so the wheels that were on Justin's bike, he took off and had ready to go if I needed a spare wheel. And then he had limited tools to fix stuff, but I think maybe between him and Scott, they had something. So yeah, that was
Enough
the
to get you
plan.
home.
Yeah, that they were at enough spots that hopefully I could get to one of them if I did need it. Luckily, my bike worked flawlessly, so I didn't need that. But that was our plan, which isn't really too much different than I guess what we would do at a U.S. gravel race. He would be in. So I mean, the one at the Rad, the race at the Rad the week before, there was only one spot he could be on the course, and so this actually had way more options for him to give me a wheel or whatnot. So.
He'd probably be a good podcast episode telling all the stories of chasing his wife all over the earth.
Sounds like they had a crazy, they had their own race in the car trying to get to these feed zones and navigating the narrow roads of Belgium. And the feed zones were chaotic, and some of them they just like barely made within a few minutes or like 5 minutes of us getting there. So they had their own adventure as well.
I'm sure they did. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, describe. I saw the big UCI coverage, their 5 minute and 48 second recap. That was an editorial comment, and like there's narrow paths. You're going through beautiful forest. There's like single track stuff. There's rocky sections. But the stuff in town, like you're going through back alleys. If somebody walks out of their back door, they're like, you're slamming into them. A wall on one side, steps coming down the other. And this is a world championship race uphill. Describe for me what it was like riding through town to get to the finish line.
Yeah. Pre-riding was like a little scary because the roads were open and like I would turn onto these things and I'm like, okay, this has got to be like a bike trail or a path or something, and then all of a sudden you'd see a car on it, and it was just so crazy to me because it was so narrow that I just couldn't imagine that somebody would be driving their car on it. So you had to be very careful pre-riding, but during the race it was actually extremely safe. I mean, the technical cornering and in and out of corners and different surface changes was hard and scary, but as far as like worrying about somebody being on the course, they did a really good job of having everything blocked off really well. And at least from I could tell as a racer, they had tons of police and volunteer force out there, and it was a very closed course, safer than I would say all the gravel races in the U.S. As far as that goes, you didn't have to worry about a car coming at you during the race or anyone really walking in front of you. But yeah, the twisty turniness, the narrow alleyways was insane, and I think that's just what the Spring Classic racing is like over there. But it was you had to be fully focused the whole time on it. You could not let your mind wander one bit.
What was it like going into that finishing stretch with all the people?
It was amazing. I've never experienced anything like it. It was electric feeling. So we got to loop through that whole stretch twice, once when we finished, but we went through it, and then we had 29 miles left. So you kind of got a feel for like, oh wow, like there was people all over the course, which was cool. You went through all these little villages and even in the forest there was people, so that was an experience for me. But I knew when we got to Leuven, I was like, oh, I bet it's going to be pretty cool. And it was crazier than I could imagine. People were banging on the barriers, so you could hear kind of this pounding. You couldn't really look because we were in a pack, and you had to be so focused with all the corners, but you could hear it. And then looking at the photos afterwards, and seeing how deep it was, just packed. My family actually and Justin, they couldn't even see me finish because it was so packed. They saw my name go across the board, but they couldn't get close enough. It was just 4 or 5 deep of people. And when I finished, I looked around and I was like, whoa, how am I going to figure out where my family is? Because I was not expecting it to be packed with that many people at the finish line, or just past the finish line too. You couldn't even move to get out of there. There was just so many people. So that was the coolest experience I've ever had. You watch it on TV and you see the fans, but to experience it in real life was cool. And then the next day we got to watch the men's race. So then we got to be out there cheering and being a part of. We were at a few different spots in the circuits in Leuven, and the men actually went through, they did 2 loops at the end, so you got to see them 3 different times. So it was really cool to be a part of the cheering, with all the Belgians cheering too.
That's cool. Was it an emotional finish after the finish line? Were you overwhelmed or anything?
At the start, I felt a little because actually there was tons of people watching our start, and that not probably quite as many as in Leuven, but I kind of got this the chills, a little bit of wow, this is pinch me, is this really happening? Am I really starting this race? And then out there, I think I was just oh my gosh, the people I'm riding with, and the noise, and yeah, I didn't get. I think I just finished and I had this big smile on my face, and I had no idea what place I had finished or anything. I just was I made it down that straightaway of Leuven, and that was my goal to just go down that and hear the crowds. And so I was just super happy regardless of what place. Just felt this, wow, I got to just do something. I think I was just more blown away and trying to process how crazy the whole race was, and all the turns and the course changes, and wow, I survived it. I was really terrified of the start loop, and I'm I didn't die on the start loop. I didn't get crashed, and I made it. So just, yeah, a lot of different emotions.
That's super cool. I love that. I got goosebumps you telling that story. That's would you do it again?
For sure. Yeah. I think, I've already looked at it'll be in France next year, in Nice actually, so I'm sure a different feel and different course, but yeah, the opportunity to race in Flanders with the history of the sport there is probably something that I'm not super young in the sport anymore, so I don't know if I'll get the opportunity to race in Flanders again. So I'm just so grateful that I jumped on that this year and did it and went for it. but yeah, I'm already looking at, wow, I wonder if I should try to go to Nice next year. It was such a cool atmosphere. And I think the UCI, I mean, there's been a lot of criticism of the course because it's so different than American gravel. But I thought it did kind of, cater a little bit to the roadies, but it was also just a really fun course to ride. And the atmosphere, they know how to put on a good event. Like, people were so excited to be there. Also, the age group world championships was also, gravel world championships were there too, which was really cool because like the older, the 50 plus men, and then all the age group women went the same day that we did, so they went behind us. And then the like under 50 men went right after the pro men. And so it was kind of cool when you're watching, because you, like, as a fan, you can watch all the pro riders go through, but then while you're waiting for the pro riders to come back and loop through, you also get to watch all the age groupers go through, and the fans were cheering just as loud for them as well, especially like if you'd see somebody riding slower or struggling, or somebody running like a low tire, the fans would just go wild, like cheering them on and egging them on to keep going. So that was really cool to witness that part of gravel, even though it's the UCI and it's the serious sport. Like, there's still that element that we kind of is what is unique about gravel, is still there at the World Championships. And I actually met this lady from Colorado and picking up my registration, and she was 80 years old and did the race and finished. And I saw a picture of her on the podium at 80 years old, and is the world champion for the 80 plus category. And so I was just super inspired by seeing that. I'm like, I hope to be like you someday. That is so cool. So
For sure. That is awesome. I love that. I'm going to have to look that up, see if I can find her. What a great story. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was so cool. I think everyone was just so happy to be there. We met these age group guys from Ireland. There was probably a group of 10 of them, and we met them pre-riding, and then we met them on the train, and just, happy to be there, happy to be, racing the same course as the pros, and also getting to kind of watch the pros too, and but then also going for their own individual age group category. So.
Cool. Well, I'm super excited for you. I'm glad it was a great experience. I know there's some kinks that still need to be worked out on a few different things. I think the course is the course. I mean, you could be a gravel snob and say, well, it's not 98% gravel or whatever, but it sounds like it was super fun, super interesting, and the course is the course. You all have to do it. So it is what it is. And then getting the opportunity to race freaking the GOAT, Mariana Voss, Lauda Kopecky, the Pook Pietrus, Lucinda Brand was there, Fem Van Empel. You beat Fem Van Empel. Did you know that?
In our group for a while, I saw that there was a girl that was on the Jumbo Visma. I knew she was on the team because I saw her helmet was that, and then her water bottle was that, but I didn't know. I mean, you can't really look that closely at the riders because you're so focused on trying to not get dropped from the group. But I was like, oh man, there was this Jumbo Visma rider in our group for a while. And then when I looked at results, I'm like, oh, that must have been her. I'm not sure if obviously she's a really strong rider, so I don't know if she had a issue or just, who knows, but it's still cool, and it's cool to see her name a few spots behind you in the results.
For sure. Sana Kant, cyclocross world champion. Like all those, what a great day, what a great experience, and how fun that must have been for you.
For sure.
I definitely kept you longer than the 20 minutes I expected, but what a fun race, and it was super fun to hear about it. And we don't get that perspective here. We didn't get to watch a lot of the race over here, and I appreciate you sharing your story.
For sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me. It's been fun to relive it a bit.
It's always most exciting to hear somebody's gut reactions, like at the finish line. People are so chatty at the finish line. Oh my gosh, blah, 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 blah. So I'm glad we could get as close to the finish line as possible. When was it? Last Saturday? Like 4 days ago?
Yeah, I think I'm still processing it. It's almost like you get back and you get back at the bike shop and like jumping in your normal life. And I'm like, did that even happen, or did we just dream that happened? I can't believe I was racing with those people in Belgium on these crazy roads. And but yeah, then
4 days ago.
And yeah, it's been just a whirlwind a bit, but yeah, it's been fun.
Yep. Well, the whirlwind continues. You'll head down to Big Sugar next, I guess.
Yeah.
You're not doing Little Sugar, are you?
You know, I really wanted to. I liked that race last year, but I decided, it's too much to do the World Champs and then try to get over the jet lag. And then Big Sugar is part of the Grand Prix, so I want to have a good race there if possible. So skipping it this year, but that the Little Sugar is a good one too. So
yeah, I kind of figured you might be skipping it because it's just this weekend. So and then Big Sugar is like in 10 days. So good luck there. I hope you do well. Congrats to you and your whole family for making the trip and managing that whole scene over there. There should probably be a movie about it, and it could have Chevy Chase, European Vacation or something. I don't know, with a bike race in the middle. Be super fun, but
yeah, that was us.
It kind of sounds like that. Thanks again for coming on. I appreciate everybody for tuning in and listening to Bike Talk with Jenna and your guest host Dave. And I don't know, I'll sign out by saying nothing compares to the simple pleasure of riding a bicycle through the twisty roads of Belgium.